Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, whatever you celebrate. We were off last week because I was down for the count, Sap, with, I don't know if it was COVID, but it wasn't pleasant, whatever it was. But what got me through a lot of it was watching basketball. But what made a lot of it worse was watching Celtics basketball. So today, we're going to talk a lot about the Celtics. We're going to talk about the Lakers too. Two teams that are not playing very well. And Sap, I know that you're a Lakers fan as long as LeBron is there, but I'm a Celtics lifer, and this is about as dark of days as a Celtics fan as I could remember.
Yeah, you're a real Celtics fan. I'm just a LeBron fan. So if he were to get traded to Cleveland by February 10th, I'd become a Cavaliers fan for the third time in my life. Or if he got traded, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to see through the end of the season, but we'll see what happens after that. But yeah, I mean, if the Celtics could get these games down to 40 minutes instead of 48, they would be in really good shape, including the Christmas game against Milwaukee, where they played really well for a long stretch of that game, but they couldn't close. They can't seem to close these games. And the Lakers also have those issues as well. Just two teams that I wasn't as high on the Celtics as I was the Lakers to start the season, but Jet, we're approaching nearly mid-season at this point. I mean, one of these teams has played 34 games. The Celtics are 16 and 18. The Lakers have played 35 games. They're 17 and 18. So we're approaching mid-season. So it's not like, let's see how long this takes to get straightened out. I don't know if either one of these teams gets straightened out. Yeah, they probably make it into the postseason, into the play-in tournament or something like that. But how far are they going to go? It almost looks like a repeat of last year when the Lakers got to the playoffs after beating Golden State in the play-in tournament and then lost in 6 games to Phoenix. And then the Celtics won in the play-in tournament over Washington and then lost in 5 games to Brooklyn. I mean, it almost looks like a repeat of last year, which was frustrating enough. And I think we both had higher hopes going into this season.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have like super high hopes for the Celtics, but this is miserable and sort of culminated with the Christmas Day loss, which was an example of what they've done all season long, which is blow games late in the fourth quarter. And then one of the worst Celtics losses that I can ever remember, perhaps one of the worst losses in the 75-year franchise history of the team, on Monday, losing to not the Minnesota Timberwolves, because that roster was not full of Timberwolves players. It was full of G Leaguers, 10-day contract guys, some people from, suburbs of St. Paul and Minneapolis. And by the way, they also blew a fourth quarter lead in that one. That was horrendous. The month of December, everybody looked at the Celtics schedule and said, well, we're going to find out what this team really is. And they've gone 4-8 in December, and including a disastrous West Coast road trip, losing to some god-awful teams, blowing leads. Really, nothing has gone right for the Celtics. I know they've been hit with the COVID bug, but basically everybody in the league has been dealing with that. Injuries aren't the Celtics' problem. It's character and chemistry and competence of management and ownership and the front office. And those things, it's a long road back for the Celtics, in my opinion, unfortunately, to be able to be in shape to be able to be, a contending team. As far as the Lakers go, Sap, I assume that you still have to hold out a little bit of optimism because they do still have LeBron James.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing an incredibly high level, Jet, right? I mean, you look at the 4 best players in the world, and I think going into the season, we would agree that the 4 best players in the world were Giannis, Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Steph Curry. Well, that's still the same top 4 in the league. I mean, LeBron's had a fantastic season. So far this year, he's averaging nearly 28 points per game, which would be his highest scoring average in over a decade. He's got more 30-point games than anyone in the league. I'm going to throw out a sneaky take that he may lead the league in scoring, because the really only other player that I could see outdistancing him would be Kevin Durant, because Steph Curry, as great as he is, and he did lead the league in scoring last year, when Klay Thompson comes back in a few weeks or a month or whenever Klay comes back, he's going to have to share the ball a little bit with Klay Thompson. Giannis is in contention to lead the league in scoring, but it could come down to Durant and LeBron James to lead the league in scoring. And at some point, if LeBron sees that there's not a great end to the season with this particular team, maybe he's just going to look at individual goals and say, what the hell, why not? In my 19th year, I go ahead and lead the league in scoring, which would be an incredible accomplishment as he closes in on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the all-time leading scorer, which I think he's going to break that record at the end of next season. But yeah, you look at LeBron, he's averaging 28 points per game, still giving you his customary 7 rebounds, 7 assists, shooting over 50% from the floor. His efficient field goal percentage is around 58%. He's playing at a very high level. On the defensive end, no, again, 19th year in the league. And I think that's where he can't control games like he used to. Last night, he started at center against Houston, and he went 32, 11, and 11, and he's been very efficient. So he's playing at a very high level. Unfortunately, Anthony Davis is out 4 to 6 weeks. Probably won't see him until February. And then there's Russell Westbrook, who it's just not a good fit, Jed. I said this from the get-go when they acquired him, that this guy is not a good fit with really any team that's in contention. He's kind of a sideshow. And I saw a game last week against San Antonio. It was the Christmas game. And Patty Mills was wide open for a 3, and it was Westbrook's guy. And Westbrook never bothered to go out there to cover Patty Mills.
Against Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, right.
Yeah.
Brooklyn. And Patty Mills had a wide open 3, and it was Westbrook's guy. And Patty Mills was having a sensational game. And Patty Mills has had a great year so far this year. Really great signing by Brooklyn. I mean, imagine him on the Celtics or Lakers. They'd be that much better. Veteran guy, knows how to win, can shoot threes. All right, so Patty Mills is wide open out there. And Russell Westbrook doesn't even bother to go out there. He's chasing stats, right? Because he's just saying, okay, if Patty Mills misses, I'm going to crash the boards and get a rebound. He's a stat patter. And this year, 28 and 8. He's not going to average a triple-double as he has 4 of the last 5 seasons. But he's also leading the league in turnovers per game. He's shooting in the low 30s from 3, in the mid-60s from the free throw line. I watched the game last night against Houston, Jet. He had a 17-footer. He was covered, but he had a 17-footer on the wing, took a shot, tried to bank it in. It hit the top of the backboard. Like, it wasn't even close. I mean, there's bricks, and then there's entire brick walls. I mean, he hit the top of the backboard, which would lead me to believe, does he need to have his vision checked? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny here because I'm a guy with bad eyes, so I can make that joke or make that point. He hit the top of the backboard from 18 feet. That's something you do on a 3-quarter, court shot attempt at the end of a quarter, not when you're 18 feet away, somewhat covered, off to the wing. I mean, if you miss, maybe a little long, a little short, a little to the side, not the top of the backboard. And he had another 7 turnovers. The team only had 12 turnovers. He had 7. But what do you do with them, right? Do you sit him on the bench at the end of the game? That would be almost impossible to deal with. Who do you trade him to?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's I see all these trade, rumors being floated out there. Lakers should trade Westbrook to this team or that team. Why would any team trade for him? I just don't understand. The contract is terrible. He's not, and he doesn't impact winning. So I don't know. And that the Lakers don't really have any picks to add as sweeteners. So why are these teams just going to, bend over backwards to help out the Lakers? I don't understand why people think it's so easy to just move on from Russell Westbrook. He's not that desirable asset that he was, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I think Sap, we both identified him as an awkward fit that would pay dividends for the Lakers more when LeBron was out of the lineup. And I think to some extent that's been true, but it's going to be hard come playoff time if the Lakers even get there at this point. When teams can just scheme defensively and leave him wide open from 3, I don't know how the Lakers counter that. I think, we talk about LeBron being the GM of the team, which he is. I think he really did a poor job, saying we should go get this guy because, they were talking about getting somebody like Buddy Hield, he's maybe not as good of a player as Russell Westbrook, but he's a far better fit. And I feel like it was either arrogance by LeBron thinking I can just make this work with anybody, or he just, for some reason, didn't know what his own, strengths helped in terms of that team, shooters. That's where LeBron is strong, is being able to kick out the shooters. I'm not sure why he thought this would work.
I don't either. I mean, I said it at that point. And again, if we're going to diss LeBron for being the GM of the Lakers this time around, so be it. But you do have to give him credit for maybe assembling the team 2 years ago, which won a championship, and assembling the team in Cleveland, which won a championship. So, give him the good and give him the bad. This has been a disaster with Russell Westbrook. And the thing is, Jet, he's playing 36 minutes a game. He hasn't missed a game. He tested positive for COVID, so it looked like he was going to be out a while. Then he retested and it was negative, and he was in the lineup that night. It's like he won't die. It's almost like, he's the guy at work, right? There's always a guy at work that you're like, boy, it'd be really nice if he just got the hell out of here for a few days. We can't stand him. He gets in the way of the sales meetings, or he's just, he puts a lot of food in the fridge and it stinks and all of that. Wouldn't it be nice if this guy was out? He shows up every game. It's like, give him credit for that, I guess, right? I mean, he does show up and he tries hard on the offensive end, but he still has no concept on how to play basketball. He's been in the league 13 years, and it's all about effort. I don't even know who to compare him to. I don't know if there's ever been a player in the league quite like that, who puts up these really great numbers. I mean, to average a triple-double 4 out of 5 years is historic, but it doesn't help winning. And again, I just go back to that one play against Brooklyn on Christmas night. Instead of covering Patty Mills, who was everything from three, he decides to wander if it's in the lane, hoping that Mills misses and he can get a cheap rebound. Remember, Rondo used to do this a lot too, where he'd crash the offensive boards to get rebounds. Meanwhile, the other team would streak back on a 3-on-2 and score a basket. That's not winning basketball. Stats don't always translate into wins. And that's just Russell Westbrook. And who's going to break him out of those bad habits at the age of 33? He's a Hall of Famer, top 75 player. Incredible brand that he's built. I think he's a likable guy because he does try hard, and he's socially active. He's so happy to be playing in his hometown of Los Angeles, wearing the Laker uniform. He grew up, idolizing Kobe Bryant like every other player that's in that age group. But it's just not working. But what do? You kind of stuck with him, and blame LeBron for that. He wanted him. Buddy Hield would have been a perfect fit as a really good 3-point shooter. I'm just hoping that Malik Monk gets more minutes. When Kendrick Nunn comes back, I think that can help. Maybe Trevor Ariza, although he's ancient too, he can be a factor. And just go with a smaller lineup. Whenever Anthony Davis gets back, he's got to play center. I mean, this is 2021 going into 2022. Playing center in the NBA is not what it was, in the 70s or 80s when you're battling Bob Lanier or Moses Malone or, real physical guys down there. It's completely different than it was back then. It's more of a skills contest. And Anthony Davis does have really good skills, although he's shooting around 20% from 3-point territory, but he's got to play the 5, and LeBron can play the 4. But we saw him last night play center. He can play wherever you need him, and then just try to get some shooters out there with him. But Russell Westbrook doesn't fit any of those types of players because he's a horrendous shooter. And oh, by the way, he's not a real good defender either. I mean, he's just lost on defense. So I don't know. They're kind of in a tough spot. And how are they going to trade him? Who wants him? Like, who would want that contract? What would you get? Would you trade him straight up for John Wall? I mean, talk about, would you rather die by knife or gun? Like, it's just,
I don't know that that's a better fit at all.
No,
John Wall,
same type of player, right? Athletic effort guy. These guys haven't reinvented themselves. The other point guard from that era, came into the league late 2008, 2009, 2010. Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, and John Wall. I give Derrick Rose credit. He's kind of reinvented himself, right? He's become a better outside shooter. Now he's out for a while with injuries with the Knicks, and he's never been the most durable guy, but he's tried to reinvent himself. Westbrook and Wall have never changed their games. And now, as they enter early 30s and Westbrook's 33, that athleticism is not quite the same. So you're not quite the same player.
Right. Let me ask you this, though, Sap. With, LeBron, like you said, putting up great stats, is being efficient, and all those, things look great, and he's checking off all those boxes. But throughout his career, he's sort of made a name for being able to elevate lesser players and impact winning by being just, being the best player on the court and being able to get the most out of other guys. Is that not the case anymore with him?
I think it is. Obviously, on the defensive end, he's not the force he used to be. This is what made him, in my opinion, the greatest player in the history of the sport. And that's why him and Jordan separated themselves, not necessarily from the centers, but from the likes of, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson, Kobe Bryant, all those other great all-around players who couldn't do it on the defensive end like LeBron and Michael could. but he can't do that anymore. And he's got to kind of pace himself. Also, because of Russell Westbrook, and again, I'm going to blame him again for this, they play at the fastest pace of any team in the league, and they're the oldest team in the league. That makes no sense. And we know when LeBron is really controlling the game, he really slows it down. He plays at a slow pace. And that's not what the Lakers are doing because Westbrook's handling the ball quite a bit. So I don't think the impact has been there the way it should be. And this should be a time, right, as LeBron's turning 37. This is supposed to be Anthony Davis's team, or at least the co-star should be Anthony Davis. Well, the year after they win the championship, he shows up out of shape and has his worst season of his career. This year, he looked to be in better shape, but was playing good, not great. Now he's out 4 to 6 weeks with that knee injury. He's just not elevated his game either. And we talked about this on an earlier podcast, Jet. When a guy breaks through and wins a championship, oftentimes his game just expands. I think we're seeing that with Giannis. The pressure's off now. Giannis has won a championship. And it's like, okay, I've got my championship. I'm not going to be lumped in it. I'm not knocking Charles Barkley or Moses Malone or Patrick Ewing, probably the 3 greatest players along with Elgin Baylor, who never won a championship. Now I've kind of separated myself from those great players because I do have a championship and his game just grows. We'll see that maybe with a quarterback in football. You break through, you win a championship, and then you go on and get better. I think Peyton Manning did that. He won a Super Bowl in 2006 and was able to win 3 more MVPs after that and play at even a higher level. We see that with Giannis. We've seen that, I think, with LeBron when he was in Miami. When he finally broke through, he became even better. With Anthony Davis, it's like he won the title, and it was like, I'm done. I got a big contract. I'm on the 75th anniversary team. Going to the Hall of Fame. I'm all set. And he doesn't look to be the most motivated guy like Giannis, who came from a completely different background, right? Giannis was a mid-first round pick. Davis was the first pick in the draft, champion at Kentucky, put up stats right away, where Giannis had to work his ass off to get to where he became, I think, the best player in the league right now. And that's frustrating because normally once you get that championship, the pressure's off. Now you can just kind of relax, but then say, I don't have to deal with that anymore. The people don't think I can win. I'm going to show you that I'm even better. And Anthony Davis hasn't done that.
No, he hasn't. He's sort of, like you said, he's sort of like rested on his laurels. In fact, he's gotten worse, especially from 3. He's become, a liability, whereas he was a pretty decent 3-point shooter. I mean, you don't want him there all game, but this season when he's been healthy, he's been horrendous from 3. It's, it's interesting, Sap, because with the Lakers, there's sort of that overriding sense of, well, we won a championship, just we're 1 season removed from it. We do have, these guys. We have 3 guys who are in the top 75 all-time list that was released this year.
Include Carmelo.
Right,
and
right.
Actually,
So, okay,
Carmelo's
4.
been a pleasant surprise. He's actually
He's been good. He's been
more than
good
I
for
thought
them.
he'd be. He's the least of their does what he does.
So they have all this, like, okay, they have the pieces where you'd be like, at some point, if they get into the playoffs, like, I guess, could they be dangerous? Yeah, because they'll have, arguably the best player on the floor, no matter who they play, and that's always gives you a puncher's chance. But with the Celtics app, it's sort of now become the opposite of there's just no hope to sell the fans. And I think I've been talking about this a lot, in my post-game shows. I think once that sort of happens, you need to really change things like dramatically and drastically, because there's just no selling any sort of optimism or hope to fans. And any fans who are buying into anything that the Celtics are doing or saying, they're just completely deluding themselves. There's just no reason to feel like no matter what the Celtics team does, the way that they're currently constituted, they're at very best a first round exit team. And I don't even know that they're that. I mean, Sap, again, this loss to Minnesota on Monday was horrific. Sap, they were playing guys like Greg Monroe had a big game against the Celtics. He hasn't played in the NBA in 3 years. He didn't even know who his teammates were. I follow the NBA, pretty religiously. After all, we do a show on it. I didn't know 90% of the guys that the Timberwolves were trotting out there, and the Celtics lost to that team. I don't care that they didn't have Jason Tatum.
You like the 12th guy on everybody's bench. Like I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. You do much more than me. I'm more macro. You're more micro. right?
Yeah,
Is that
I mean, yeah, I
I'm
like that. I like to think that I know what I'm talking
no, you
about.
do, but you didn't even know who these guys. Look, if Prince was still alive, he would have been playing for the Timberwolves the other night.
Probably. Why
Seriously,
not?
what the hell? Why not? He probably would beat Marcus Smart off the dribble. Sorry for that, shot at your guy.
He's not. You know what, Sep? He's become not my guy anymore. No, and there's no
I
one
give
on
you
the
credit.
Celtics who's become my guy.
No, there's really no one to really be enthralled with. I mean, Jason Tatum's very talented, but it just doesn't ever look like he's going to reach his potential. And Jaylen Brown now has become a guy who's not durable. He misses roughly 30% of his games. And he's also become kind of this know-it-all. I mean, he's a very smart guy, and I like Jaylen Brown a lot. But the other night, Al Horford talked about, well, we've got to kind of look in the mirror. And another reporter brought that quote to Jaylen Brown, and Jaylen Brown said no comment, as if to say, no, we're beyond that. We don't have to look in the mirror. That's wrong.
Right. That
When
was
you're a
weird.
five,
I don't know what
yeah,
that was about.
he also has had issues with a lot of teammates, right? Marcus Morris, Kyrie Irving, Marcus Smart. Like, as much as I like Jaylen Brown, I think he's great as a guy. I like what he does in the community and all that stuff. I'd like to hang out with him. I think he's an interesting young guy. I think he's going to run for politics at some point. But I don't know if necessarily that's the best thing in an NBA locker room where you think you're just smarter than everybody. And you may be smarter than everybody, but you don't have to let them know about that. It's just a weird fit. Jason Tatum's not a leader. The coach, Ime Udoka, I mean, he kind of gives me the same vibe that John Farrell gave me as Red Sox manager. Now, Farrell did win a World Series in his first year, but they look like big, intimidating guys who you think would scare the shit out of their players, that they'd play hard. But it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't seem to pull through that way, right? I mean, you look at Ime Udoka, big guy, good-looking guy, seems to be very charismatic, has cachet, played in the league, played under Popovich, coached with Popovich, but it doesn't translate that anybody seems to be fearful of him. And I know in that league, no one's fearful of their head coach, but you would think that he would have that type of personality. We don't even see that. After every game, he's like explaining things, and I'm almost like, well, you're the coach. Like, why are you saying these things? Like, we're going to fix it. You're the coach. Try to fix it. It's not real enjoyable to watch. But my question to you, Jed, is what do you do? Do you blow it up? Do you trade Jaylen Brown? Obviously, I would move on from Marcus Smart at this point when you can, which I think is January 15th. Maybe even Rob Williams III, who's constantly hurt and, not the most durable guy. So what do you do? I mean, do you do this shot in the dark and just hope that shaking things up makes them more interesting and better watch than this team that's just been a 500 team since the bubble ended, nearly 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think you do. I think you take drastic steps, honestly, Sap. I mean, I see a lot of people, the tide is sort of turning a little bit on social media with fans being a little fed up, but now, there's still plenty of people who are just completely delusional and pointing to, finding any sort of stat they can to say, no, this Brown Tatum pairing is good. This is what's going to lead us to the promised land. And at this point, I mean, you're insane if you think that's the case. And so a lot of people are saying, oh, well, just add a third star. Okay, great. How do you add a third star? Why would somebody, in free agency, want to come here at this point? You come to a promising situation, not to a dumpster fire. And two, you don't have the assets to really trade for anybody because you haven't developed your younger players. So if Marcus Smart and Rob Williams, those are okay. At least they're halfway decent trade chips, but they're not trade chips that can land you a star player. So people are deluding themselves into thinking that's not like, oh, I'll just trade for a third star. Well, it's not that easy. Why doesn't everybody just do that? If that's all it takes, it's really bad, and a lot of it has to do with the situation that Danny Ainge left the team in, which was just institutional arrogance. The Celtics have become a very arrogant team under Danny Ainge, thinking, okay, well, we have all these draft picks. I'm not going to trade any of them. I'm not going to trade for players because I think I know better than everybody else. Unless I win a trade, 99-1, I'm not going to do it. I can, find gold anywhere in the draft. I'm Danny Ainge. I know exactly what I'm doing. Ownership just said to whatever he said, yep. We believe in you. Do whatever you want, Danny. And it's gotten to the point where, this team is in the absolute worst spot you can be in the NBA. And they need to pick a direction, which is go all in, trade all your picks, trade whatever you got and try to, desperately to add that third sort of close to a star level player. which I don't think is realistically going to happen, or you pick one of Tatum or Brown, you blow up the rest, and you try to rebuild from there, similar to what the Celtics did the first year under Danny Ainge, which was he stuck with Paul Pierce, traded away the rest of the roster basically, and started from scratch there. But they need to start from scratch. I mean, this is, again, it's so frustrating to hear Celtics fans go, well, COVID, and they've beaten all these above 500 teams. Well, they've lost to a million crap teams. And in the month of December, the month that everybody said, well, this is the real litmus test, they've gone 4-8, Sap, and they haven't learned from any of their mistakes. That's the most frustrating part. Fourth quarters, they blow fourth quarters all the time. They start the game slow. The same things that have been tripping them up all season long are continuing to trip them up. And their two star players, Tatum and Brown, go absolutely invisible down the stretch of games. I saw this tweet from the Celtics, like talking about how great Jaylen Brown's playing in the past 4 games. His past 4 games, 30 points, 34 points, 25 points, 26 points. Okay, 3 of those games have been losses, Sep, and he's gone absolutely invisible in the fourth quarter in those games. Tatum as well. In the Christmas Day game, Sep, against Milwaukee, I think they had like a 7-point lead or so with about 4 minutes left, and their offense just went into this absolute panic isolation mode. They had, I think, their last 4 possessions were ISO, and they missed free throws. It's just a mess, Sap. It's not going to get better.
They should play Joe Johnson more, because he'd fit right in with ISO Joe.
They should.
In that Milwaukee game, it was lauding Jaylen Brown for being great. Scored 26 points. He was 8 for 24 from the floor. That's not a good game. 8 for 24 from the floor is not good. That's 33.3%. Any guy in the NBA takes 24 shots, he should get 26 points on a bad night. And that was the case, on Christmas Day in Milwaukee. So, it's frustrating. And then a lot of not just the Celtic fans, but a lot of people who cover the team, Dan Greenberg from Barstool, or
he's driving me crazy. I mean, he's going to drive this team right into the freaking ground.
Well, it's almost like it's like talking to Patriot fans who are trying to tell me that Mac Jones is better than Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert. And I'm like, dude, if you watch the games, Joe Burrow threw for 525 yards last week, and Justin Herbert looks like he was created in a lab. You've got Mac Jones, who I think is a nice quarterback, but he's limited, right? And we're seeing him in inclement weather not be very good. In fact, he threw 3 passes in that hurricane in Buffalo, and then we saw a little bit of cold and wind on Sunday against Buffalo at Gillette Stadium, and he wasn't very good. So the Patriot fans and Celtic fans are delusional. The same thing with the Celtics. Oh, we can't trade Marcus Smart. We can't trade Robert Williams III. I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was traded,
right,
when he was the best player in basketball. So anybody is tradable. Sorry, just facts of life. I would move on from probably Brown, because I think Tatum is the better player. Obviously the rumor we've heard for 3 years is Bradley Beal. Would that make Jason Tatum happy? How would they play together? Also, the fact that Beal's kind of his big brother, he's older, he's been in the league longer, that might work. I think the Brown-Tatum combination doesn't necessarily work because they're essentially the same age, right? They're a year apart. They came into the league a year apart. They're both trying to build their brand. It doesn't work that way in the league. Normally, you need to have your 1 and your 2 established, with one being older, one being younger, one being the leader, one being the follower. They're both kind of in this weird situation. I'll go back, since I'm this ancient guy, to the early 90s. Dallas had back-to-back drafts, which were sensational. They ended up with Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, and Jim Jackson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Back-to-back years. I forget which one came first. They had all 3 of those guys, the 3 J's. That's what they called them, and the Celtics have the 2 J's. They had to break it up because it just didn't work. And to me, Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, and Jim Jackson are better players, or at least as good as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And that didn't work because you had 3 guys essentially the same age, all trying to sow their oats. You need to have some sort of difference there. That's why it's working in Phoenix, right? You've got Devin Booker, you've got DeAndre Ayton, but who do you have? You have Chris Paul. He's the unquestioned leader. I mean,
until he got there, they were, crap.
They didn't make the playoffs. Right. Yeah, they got hot in the
right.
bubble. I remember they went 8-0 in the bubble, and everybody's like, oh, they're going to be good next year. And then they added Chris Paul So is there another Chris Paul out there, a veteran point guard who can come in here and say to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, guys, this is how we got to do things, and that point guard can set those guys up. They don't have a natural point guard. They didn't with Kemba. Kemba was not a natural point guard, more of a lead guard. Isaiah Thomas, who played 1 year with Jaylen Brown, a scorer more than a passer. Obviously, Kyrie is more of a lead guard. I'm talking about a pure point guard, which there's not a lot of them around in the league anymore because everything is so scoring centric. Chris Paul's like the real old school point guard. Is there a guy out there like that? Is it Mike Connolly? But again, why any of these teams are better than the Celtics? They're not going to give you a player that's part of a contending. Like Utah's not going to say, oh, the Celtics need, especially now that Danny Ainge is there. You think he's going to go out and help the Celtics at this point? I don't think it ended well here. Is he going to say, yeah, Mike Connolly, let's send him to Boston to help the Celtics win a championship? No, the Celtics are a mediocre team right now. No one's going to help them out there. They may be cleaning house more so than just about any team in the league, right? If they want to reinvent themselves.
No, I mean, I've been saying it for a while, and I feel like I've just been proven more and more right as the season's gone on that they need to start from scratch. I think it's been obvious. I'm glad to see some of the beat writers and some of the reporters are finally starting to come around a little bit, but there's still a very vocal contingent that are saying, just wait till everybody's healthy. And this team made the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of times. Like it's insanity. It's insanity to think this team's anything other than a massive disappointment and a massive failure. And they need to start from scratch because, like I said at the beginning of this, Sep, you need to be able to sell hope to your fan base. And there's absolutely no way you can sell hope with this Celtics team. The hope is gone. And
isn't the Celtics fan base a bit delusional too? I mean,
delusional.
We talk about Chris Forsberg and Dan Greenberg and Scal, and this guy's awesome. And this guy, like, if I hear, Scal keeps telling me that Jason Tatum's a top 10 player. No, he's not. They're not superstars. They're stars. They make the all-star team. They can become superstars. But I use that term, less frequently than most people. Superstars to me are guys in impact winning. LeBron, Giannis, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. There's a few other guys like that. So yeah, it's such a delusional fan base. The fringe media too. I mean, media is different now than it used to be. Like it used to be, you had Bullpen from the Herald, and you had whoever was covering for the Globe, and those were the big guys. Now it's just kind of splintered, right? Those guys, the Globe and the Herald, still have beat reporters, but they don't carry the weight they used to. It's a lot different now because you've got bloggers, and you've got NBC Sports Boston, both EEI and the Sports Hub. So you got all sorts of different mechanisms to cover the team. So, but they're delusional too. It's like, oh, we can't trade Jaylen Brown. He's going to be a spectacular player. Like, as I said, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar got traded. Moses Malone got traded. They can certainly trade Jaylen Brown, and maybe they have to do that to blow it up. But we keep hearing these names of Karl Anthony Towns. Why would Minnesota trade Karl Anthony Towns? They have a better record than you. They just beat you with their G League team, and they have new. They're not going to trade their best player because the Celtics need him.
No, it's completely delusional, and to continue down this road is only going to lead to more frustration and misery. So anybody who's like, oh, they got to hang on to all these guys, to what end? To continuously get into the play-in tournament. I don't see that there's any reason. They have not shown any reason to believe in this team. And so when you the track record, Sep, now we have a pretty good track record of all of last year, this year to this point. The bubble I look at as an anomaly, and the season before the bubble, this team has been vastly disappointing. And so why would you think it's going to suddenly magically click? There's no reason to believe that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, that's my opinion. I think more people are coming around to it, but until the fans, I think, really put the Celtics' feet to the fire, I don't see that ownership is particularly engaged anymore. I don't know that Brad Stevens was the right choice to be the general manager of the team. I don't know that he has proven any sort of adept scouting or ability to make trades. I don't think he has any relationships with other GMs. So, this is a long, hard task ahead of the Celtics, and they need to be able to be prepared to sort of take a couple steps back in order to take some steps forward. And I don't know that ownership's willing to do that. And that's really frustrating for a fan to just be mired in that bad to mediocre stage.
Yeah, no, it looks like much of the same. So it is frustrating, especially when ownership's not engaged. Because if you're a fan, and I'm not, but if you're a fan, how can you be engaged if ownership isn't engaged? So
Right. I mean, I think that it's just a complete mess. It's as, like I said, Sap, when we first started talking about this, it's as dark of a day as I can remember in my 30 plus years of being a Celtics fan. This is as bad of a situation as I can remember. Because while they've had worse teams, you have that optimism of, oh, maybe we're gonna be in the lottery. Maybe we'll get Tim Duncan. Maybe we'll get Greg Oden or Kevin Durant. So there was that sort of ability to sell a little bit of hope when they were terrible. Now it's like, okay, they're not nearly bad enough to, get one of those top picks this year because, Detroit has like 5 wins. But they have no chance of winning a playoff series. So, what's the point? You have 17 world championships. The expectation is, competing for titles, and they're so far away from that. It's ridiculous to think that suddenly this roster is going to just be like, oh yeah, this is how you win games, and start ripping off wins. It's just not going to happen.
no, I mean, they become the Indiana Pacers of the last 15 years, right? Like the highlight
Totally.
is they were able to take LeBron and the Cavaliers to Game 7 4 years ago in the first round of the playoffs, and a half a decade or a decade before that, they faced LeBron in the conference finals and they lost. And the Celtics talk about that they went to the conference finals 3 out of 4 years and they lost to who. So who's no longer in the conference. The conference is strong because I think what happened is LeBron went to the West, and then a lot of the stars from the West came East, whether it be Durant and Harden and other players like that. So I think the East is pretty deep, and even if they were a really good team, I couldn't see them crashing the party and getting to an NBA Finals. But at least don't be frustrating to watch. Like, take care of business against an undermanned Minnesota team. Don't have a 14-point lead going into the fourth quarter against Chicago, who's a really good team, but still you have a 14-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and then you lose by 14. I didn't think an NBA team could be outscored by 28 points in a 12-minute stretch. I really didn't think that was possible, but the Celtics pulled that off earlier in the season against the Chicago Bulls. So that's all frustrating. But, again, the trade deadline is February 10th. Hopefully they do some things to shake things up, and hopefully the Lakers do some things to shake things up, because neither team looks like it's heading in the right direction. The only advantage the Lakers have is they do have LeBron, right? So
Right.
if they somehow sneak up to the 6th seed and play Utah in the first round, they could beat them, and all of a sudden, Anthony Davis is engaged and some of these other guys come along and play well. That's the track record. With the Celtics, they don't have that to fall back on.
No, they don't. And like I said, it comes down to being able to sell hope, either internally to your own team or to fans. And the Celtics can't do that right now. So that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. As always, we're presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out the show wherever podcasts are found, or on YouTube, youtube.com/Jet Stryer. Check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. And we'll be back later in the week with another pod. See you, everybody.